If you played a Mario game during the earlier days of the internet, you probably were familiar with rumors about being able to play as Luigi. These rumors and others like them spread around a lot back in the day, as it was harder to disprove them and many of us were much younger and more gullible at the time. Perhaps the most well-known case of this was the infamous L is real 2401 sign in Super Mario 64. A common idea became that there were exactly 2401 coins in the game, and collecting all of them would unlock Luigi. This wasn't true, though it wasn't too far off the actual number of coins in the game, 2672, so it seemed plausible. However, in 2007, with the release of Super Mario Galaxy, Nintendo decided to play into the rumors and actually added Luigi. Not just as in those levels you have to rescue him from, as in they made him an actual playable character as a reward for getting 100%. How crazy is that? I bet at least some of you played the game extensively as a child and still didn't know that was the case. He's absolutely there. Furthermore, if you also get 100% completion as Luigi, you unlock the Grand Finale Galaxy, meaning those classic 121st star rumors actually turned out to be true as well. Anyway, when it came time to do some speedruns of the game, there was a split between those who preferred to use Mario and those who preferred to use Luigi. This culminated in the speedrun.com leaderboards having two separate tabs for both characters. But why exactly was there a split? Why did some people prefer playing with one or the other? Well, to put it simply, in Super Mario Galaxy, L is not just real. L is kinda goated with the sauce, and M, despite being the game's namesake, kinda sucks. Thus, over the past nearly 20 years now, speedrunners have overwhelmingly preferred Luigi. And so today, we're gonna delve into this topic and answer the question, why Mario sucks in Super Mario Galaxy speedrunning. As a quick note, I would appreciate if you could click the like button and subscribe. It's completely free, really helps on my channel, and you can always change your mind later. Enjoy. So, what makes Mario and Luigi different from each other? Well, the first thing you would probably realize when playing the game is that Luigi runs faster than Mario. It may not seem like much here, but trust me, if you play the entire game as Mario at one consistent speed and then try Luigi, it'll feel like a big difference. Speedruns are of course all about speed, so even just a little difference here begins to create favor for one of them. But it begins to get even worse for Mario when we talk about jumping. In other 3D Mario titles, time save often comes in the form of faster horizontal movement, being able to move from point A to point B along a given area without elevation changing too much. In Super Mario Galaxy, time is mainly saved instead by going up faster. Vertical movement and vertical speed in this game are extremely important, and the biggest shortcuts are usually ones where players can take advantage of the many vertical movement options to skip over vast portions of a level. This plays into the Mario and Luigi divide very directly, as Luigi's jump is higher than Mario. This means that many skips are significantly more difficult as you can't get as much height. Let's look at an example. In the Beach Ball Galaxy mission, the Secret Undersea Cavern, there is a skip on the Cyclone Stone where by doing a long jump at this up left corner, you can skip to the very end of the level where the star is, saving around 10 seconds. The skip can be tricky for newcomers, but to the experienced speedrunner with Luigi, it's mostly a piece of cake to perform. With many years poured into this game, I pretty squarely fall into this category and can pull it off with no problem. But here's me trying it with Mario and you can see how much harder it is. Mario just goes nowhere near as high as Luigi. Mario runners usually instead have to opt for a much sketchier strategy, walking off this lower section of the wall which is way more difficult, but it's the only way to make this work consistently. And this is far from the only example. In Honeyhive Galaxy's mission Trouble on the Tower, you can do a backflip at this spot to wall kick off the tree and climb up to the tree fort without having to take this launch start and drop down the normal way. The camera is a little awkward, but it's fairly easy to perform with Luigi. Mario on the other hand is a different story. Even though I was able to get it, it was still an immense struggle compared with Luigi. I think these examples should show the point. If you're playing as Mario, almost all skips are just going to be harder. Whether it's a little more precise than their Luigi counterparts, or if it means you're going from something moderately tricky to something nigh on impossible. This means you're more likely to make mistakes, and some skips you'll have to leave out of your speedruns that you wouldn't have to as Luigi. So that's already quite a big difference. The gameplay in every level is just harder and slower, but usually it only loses a few seconds per each star, and in a 61 star any percent speedrun, that amounts to only a few minutes over the course of 2 hours, so what's the big deal? Well, let's get into the other major problem. To demonstrate this, I'm going to perform the first few minutes of a Super Mario Galaxy speedrun as both Mario and Luigi, ending at this point where you regain control of Mario after reaching the gateway to the starry skies. Starting with Mario, the timer begins upon selecting play this file. Then I have to sit through the Star Festival cutscene and watch Mario arrive at the town. This takes a while and means I don't gain control of Mario until 43 seconds in. Then all I do is long jump for about 15 seconds until I reach the town centre where the airship cutscene triggers. I can't skip this cutscene, so I have to sit through all 1 minute and 36 seconds of Bowser showing off his fancy new fleet. Either way, I eventually regain control again, where I continue to do more long jumps towards Peach's castle. Remember what I said about this game being heavily centered on vertical movement? Well, in sections of the game that are mostly horizontal like this, you're pretty much limited to only long jumping. The best case of this is probably Sweet Sweet Galaxy. I mean, just look at this riveting gameplay. Anyway, after another 15 seconds you get to the second airship cutscene, which is even longer this time at over 2 minutes, and once it's over you're still not done because Mario has only just woken up on the gateway to the Starry Skies, and you have to watch another small cutscene and get through some text. It's overall around 2 minutes and 25 seconds between gameplay here before finally being able to properly do anything around 5 minutes and 13 seconds after starting the run, of which only about 30 seconds was actual gameplay. Now let's try the same thing again with Luigi starting the time upon selecting play this file. So, upon selecting a brand new Luigi file, even if you've done nothing with it, you will still start at the gateway to the Starry Skies. This means you save around 5 minutes just by the game starting at a different location. And as Mario, not only does that make the run longer, it also means that every time you reset a run and try again, you pretty much have to wait 5 minutes every single time before you can do anything. Fantastic! And this intersects with the movement problem as well. In the same level, just a few minutes on, there is a skip on this planet where you do a very precise glitch called a mega triple jump, and usually combined with a 2-player or co-star jump to reach the next planet, saving around 15 seconds. This thing is really hard to pull off. It involves flicking the joystick at a very precise point, which for some reason results in your triple jump being way higher than usual. But it's not just hard, it's also extremely inconsistent, and in general, even the best runners can only expect to get it about 50% of the time. Which means you will lose about 50% of all runs that get to this point. So if you just can't get it that run, you've got to reset. And remember, Mario doesn't go as high as Luigi, so it's even harder now, and even more problematically, you have to sit through 5 minutes of pure nothingness, or to give you a second try at a trick which you have a strong chance of just failing again, at which point you would have to wait another 5 minutes. I think you can get the idea by now that the intro cutscene really sucks. Let's say you have a 4-hour session of attempts and that you have 15 different runs that went various lengths into the game. That means you spent roughly an hour and 15 minutes, or around a third of the entire session, just watching the intro where you do basically nothing. And remember, all of this is avoided by choosing to just do speedruns with Luigi instead. I think this should really begin to drive home by now just how much Luigi has become the preferred mode for speedrunning this game. Mario just adds several layers of complexity that Luigi runners don't even have to think about. Something about the intro cutscene with Mario may occur to you though. Why not just change the timing method? Instead of Mario runners being forced to watch the intro, why not just start at Gateway? This is very simple to do just by saving a file there, and it's not like similar things haven't been tried in other games. Super Mario Sunshine famously has allowed its runners since 2020 to use a hacked file to skip its similarly long opening cutscene, while still keeping the gameplay that exists in between, and uses a timer offset to account for this to ensure consistency with older runs and those who still choose to start from a normal file. Well, there's a few issues with doing something like this in Super Mario Galaxy. The biggest one is if we did use the gateway file timing method as it's usually known by, it would mean all speedruns with the old method would now not be properly timed, and fixing this will be a problem because there's no real way to convert these times properly. As Luigi, it's about 2.2 seconds between selecting a new file and the first frame of the gateway cutscene. So to convert older runs, you could just start timing them from the first gateway frame as Mario and add 2.2 seconds, but that would feel pretty arbitrary and strange. Oh, you thought your 80% Mario PB started here? No, it didn't. Also, this would require the Herculean task of retiming thousands of runs, many of which don't have video anymore, to bring them in line with the new system. It would just be super scuffed all around. Well, why not use a hacked file like Mario Sunshine to force skipping the cutscenes? Well, even if that was possible, it would most likely only be doable on the Wii or Wii U versions of the game, where modding is much more accessible. But the Nintendo Switch version, as part of the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection, is the fastest version of the game, and thus is widely sought after by speedrunners. And modding such a thing would be much more difficult, and furthermore can only be done on certain very old Switches, so plenty of people just wouldn't be able to use it. It's a very annoying situation all around, where there's definitely an appetite for potential ways to get around the intro cutscenes, but there's not really any good way to implement it. Each potential one has multiple holes, and it's hard to see that changing anytime soon. And remember, if you just play with Luigi, you don't have to think about any of this. And considering many runners almost never try out Mario, it's probably stalled potential progress on making one of these solutions work, as it's just not very important to as many people. So far, we've established Mario has plenty of shortcomings that make most dedicated speedrunners prefer Luigi. He doesn't jump as high in a game all about vertical movement, he walks slower, and has to sit through a dauntingly long opening sequence every run. But are there any outright benefits to playing as Mario? Well, there are some. Perhaps most notably is whilst Luigi runs faster than Mario, he takes longer to reach his top speed. You can see this here, how the dust particles under Luigi take longer to disappear, which implies the player has finished accelerating. This can be problematic for multiple reasons, such as if you're trying to do a long jump but don't have enough speed yet, and you do a backflip by accident. It can be annoying to do this, but it's not too hard to get the hang of and get a feel for how to time long jumps properly. But as Mario, you can do them more or less instantly, which does help. The next benefit is that when Luigi comes to a complete stop, he slides way more than Mario does. This is probably one of the more finicky things casual players have to deal with when making the switch, remembering that if you're slowing down to not do so too near an edge or else you'll slide straight off. But for an experienced player, this is hardly a downside. To avoid sliding off an edge, it's very simple to just jump and break the slide, which a speedrunner will always pretty much be aware of when they need to do that. I'm sure at least once a high-level speedrunner has slid off an edge like this as Luigi, and they wouldn't have as Mario, but it's a pretty minor issue once you know what you're doing. There is also the issue of swimming. Spinning underwater is the fastest way to swim, and with Mario it's no big deal. But Luigi runs out of air so much faster when doing this that after just a dozen or so spins, the meter is pretty much entirely drained. This one is definitely more problematic than the sliding, but once again, the experienced speedrunner will be aware of this and knows the limitations of Luigi's lung capacity. A good place to demonstrate this is the Sea Slide Galaxy's second main mission, Faster Than a Speeding Penguin, where the objective is to come first in the penguin race. As Luigi, about halfway through, runners will intentionally drain the meter and lose 2 pieces of health to avoid having to go out of their way to replenish air. But it's at this point a bubble containing a coin is right in their path and they grab it to avoid dying. This may look tricky, but I've probably died to this perhaps once or twice ever. It's surprisingly simple once you know what's happening. And that's the thing. If you understand where to go and what to do, you pretty much nullify any issues that arise from playing as Luigi. They're just simply that trivial, and they pale in comparison to the major issues I've discussed so far that come with playing as Mario. So, in conclusion, Mario has plenty of problems as we've gone over, and he has extremely little to offer as a bonus for choosing him. However, even though Luigi is pretty much better in all ways in a technical sense, Mario does have some virtues. I've established that Mario is generally harder to play as, but from that, some people prefer him as they like the challenge using him poses. One trick done as Luigi might not be much, but your ability to do it as Mario can wow many people. It's hard, but to many, that is what makes it fun and satisfying. Due to this, there's plenty of runners historically and currently who favour Mario for speedruns. In fact, the Japanese speedrun community has a strong tradition of using Mario, and have held the world record at any percent multiple times. Most notably would be player Negutaro, who held it for around 5 years during the early 2010s. Additionally, did you know Mario is technically more popular than Luigi? On speedrun.com there are around 670 people who have done an any percent Mario run compared with just 463 who have done any percent Luigi. This is likely just because Mario is more accessible. You don't need a special file ready for it, so for those who are just looking to do one or a few runs, they'll just play as Mario before moving on. Additionally, runners like these would also probably be more used to Mario from when they play the game casually in their childhood. This would explain why most runners who take the game more seriously instead choose Luigi, as it's a more sustainable long-term strategy. So all in all, even though this video title says Mario sucks, I don't think that's really true. Whilst Mario is more difficult and most people thus choose Luigi, it's still something many runners prefer for the challenge. And whilst the intro remains annoying, earlier this year a major discovery was made whereby pausing the game frame perfectly whilst entering the first airship cutscene, saving and exiting to the main menu and re-entering the same file allows you to skip the cutscene and save over a minute. This was a dream come true for the community. After over 15 years you could finally skip one of the cutscenes even though the timing is very tight. And whilst the second even longer airship cutscene remains unskippable, there's more hope now that a skip could one day be possible and thus only the comparatively short Star Festival cutscene would remain. But regardless of what happens in the future, today Mario speedruns are truly their own beast. They're very different from Luigi speedruns, and those who choose to take on the challenge deserve the recognition. It can prove very difficult and force you to waste a lot of time sitting on the opening cutscene, but it's all worth it for the achievement of improving on a personal best. Thanks for watching.